Welcome back to the Huddle podcast. And MJ, we have a massive guest. I would dare say this guest is a guest and a half.
This is
He's
familia.
such a big,
for real.
absolutely 100% familia. Without further ado, let's give a nice Huddle welcome to the head coach of the Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. It's nice to be on. Thank you very much.
Listen, Coach, you've been so good to I'd say to MJ and I, and whenever you've come on Good Morning Football, you've been so good to us. So thank you for being generous with your time today.
No, I appreciate it, guys. You know, the people want information. People want to know. And, you know, we have a great platform now. It's something I've learned and realized and come to appreciate. You know, back in the day as a player, you know, you really didn't feel like you should do what we're doing now on these platforms. And that's informing people. And I think it's important that we do the things the right way.
I mean, it's such a huge touch point between the franchises, the players themselves, the coaches, and the fans, right? Outside of game day, outside of even just social media. Yep. Everyone who loves the NFL, who loves these teams, what they want is to feel like they know you a little bit more, like they know the day-to-day. We were just discussing this before you jumped on, Coach, and we're like, wow, he's coming on the pod. Like, I can't believe he made time for us. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a peek at what a day in the life is like? I mean, when do you sleep? How do you have time to come on the Huddle podcast? Like, are there snacks readily available in case you don't have lunch? Like, how does this go?
Oh, yeah.
We want to know everything.
I got lunch with me right now, just so you know. I mean, and that's really what you look for. Is you look for those breaks in the day that you can say, hey, you know what, you can pile some stuff on me right now. So a lot of times I do try to eat lunch while I'm doing certain things like this.
Sure.
Just because, again, as you said, MJ, it's important because this is a touch point. You know, we have a fan base that we're trying to reintroduce them to our team. And so to make myself available is important for us going forward. So I try to make sure I have that time. And I create those opportunities so we can talk about our football team.
Now, you just came up with a really big decision when you named Sam Howell as your quarterback one. We'll get into what went into the decision making, but again, just out of curiosity for ourselves, because you are a coach, you're regimented. When do you do your best thinking? In the shower, in the commute, during lunchtime, when you're working out? Because I know for myself, MJ, I don't know about you, but the car, I mean, for me, it's in the shower. So this is a big decision you had to make. What was your thought process?
Well, you know, in coming up with some parameters, you know, thinking about when was the right opportunity to felt like we really knew. Well, last year, I would say probably when we got at the combine and, you know, I had to speak about Sam. I talked about, you know, giving Sam the opportunity. I really thought about a lot of the things that we were hoping to do this off season, you know, as far as getting prepared for OTAs and going through mini camp and then, you know, getting ready for training camp, going through training camp, practicing with another team. Because at the time we didn't know it was Baltimore. We were still trying to make arrangements. And so that's when I thought, you know what, that would be a really good time to make a decision is after our first preseason game, after practice sessions with another team. We should have a pretty good definition as to who our quarterback is going to be. And so that was one of the things that we really thought about. And for me, that moment was really just, you know, in the hotel room at the combine in Indianapolis, just sitting there thinking about, you know, what were we going to do? How were we going to do it? What the parameters were, what were the objectives. And really, I spent a lot of time that evening jotting down a bunch of notes about, you know, what would it take for me to feel confident that I really truly believe Sam was ready to go.
You know, you mentioned this fan base that you're trying to re-energize, Coach, and it's not lost on us that, you know, there's a lot of work being done in Washington with you guys. You're not just restructuring from an X's and O's standpoint, re-energizing the fan base, but also from a front office standpoint too. I had the opportunity to host a panel with Jason Wright, who is one of the most brilliant minds in this game, the president of the Washington Commanders. If you guys can look him up, I highly suggest it. He was so impressive. But just from a coaching standpoint, right, and focusing in on the X's and O's, on making sure the team is ready to go, and that the fans, especially now in preseason when they get to come out to practices and things like that, really focus on the game. How do you keep yourself square in the midst of all of that, Coach?
Well, what's interesting was last year I made a move with our offensive coordinator and brought Eric Bieniemy in. And one thing that Eric said that really made a lot of difference in my thought process this year was, we have to learn to be comfortable when we're uncomfortable, and that's what he wanted to create. And so in talking with him about those things, it really kind of led me to think, I've been comfortable for the last several years as a head coach. Coming back to my time in Carolina to where I am now, I think a little shakeup would be good. So one of the things we talked to Eric about, I sat down, we talked and had a great discussion about, listen, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do all the scheduling. Part of learning how to be a head coach is, being given certain tasks. He's the assistant head coach. Said, why don't you do scheduling? Why don't you do the planning for training camp? And so he went right to work. He grabbed a lot of his notes from his time with Coach Reed and basically fashioned what our training camp was going to look like in terms of resembling what he was used to, the things that he did. And I looked at it. This was right out of Coach Reed's book. It was from when I was with Coach Reed for 5 years. So we went back and we did a lot of these basic things, different things, got us out of our comfort zone, things that we've been used to. Some of us have been here the whole time. So this was a big change. And so thinking outside the box and changing the way we did things, I think has been very good for our football players. For the organization, for our team, and really it's been very good for me because I'm looking at it differently than I had in the last 12 seasons as a head coach.
Well, Coach, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago where it seemed that people were raising their eyebrows when you talked about players coming to you about Eric Bieniemy and his style, et cetera. And then you came back and you said, hey, this is how things are. You were very open and honest with the process. And with you being as open and honest and straightforward as you are, you seem to not let any sort of hiccup in the messaging or any of those sorts of things to stop you from telling it like it is. And that, I imagine, probably was not an easy thing for you to navigate around.
Honestly, it really wasn't, because I didn't get what the uproar was. I really didn't understand why people felt the way, basically me telling, the truth. I mean, our guys were a little concerned. They didn't know Coach. And I said, go talk to him, get a chance to really find out who he is, understand what he's trying to accomplish, and get a feel for what he's trying to get you guys to do. And so, individually, and these were a bunch of individuals, they went out and they met with Coach and they talked to Coach individually. And he was really straightforward with them to the point where I had a few of them come to me and say, wow, Coach, I get it. Well, that day when I did that press conference, that was also one of the best practices we had. I mean, we talked about it as a coaching staff, and everybody was, God, they're getting it. They're seeing it. They understand what the tempo is about. They understand why we're doing these things this way. We're understanding why we're demanding certain things. And you really saw the players, I think, have those aha moments was, oh, I see it now. And I think it's made a difference. I mean, I thought, the 2 scrimmage practices we had against Baltimore and the game we had against Baltimore was indicative of the way our guys are approaching things. It's a completely different thing. We are outside of our box. I mean, we're beyond our comfort zone. So to me, it's accomplished several things that I've wanted to do in bringing Eric aboard. And so I couldn't be happier.
I love that you mentioned that, because we know, especially football players, they're creatures of habit, right? Like they love the routine. This is how it's always been done. This is where I go at 9 a.m. So change is hard, but sometimes it's really necessary to reach that next point. Coaches, we're talking to you here, and for all of you listening to the El Huddle podcast, like Coach has one of the most striking setups in his office. It's very, very cool. But one thing that keeps jumping out at me, Coach, is seeing that jersey that's framed behind you with your last name on it, Rivera, right? Which for us, of course, and especially for the Latino community, that carries so much weight and so much pride to know that uno de nosotros, de nuestra gente, is in a head coaching position, right? And you, I find it so interesting with your cultural background, Puerto Rican, Mexican, Filipino, like the tapestry of the Latino community is very wide, it's very broad, and it's mixed with a lot of different things. For you in just growing up, what were the key points for you from your culture that you've carried over? Somebody asked me the other day, like, what are the skills that you've learned from being Latina? I was like, well, I don't have enough room in this like little box that you gave me to answer it, because it's a lot.
It is.
How does it resonate for you?
Well, for me, it really, everything started with family first and foremost. I mean, it really is. It revolves around family and hard work. One of the really neat things that my dad's family has done in Puerto Rico is whenever you go back, there's about 45 acres that the family has owned. It's been in the family for a long time. And
cool.
and it's a little bit of a bowl. And at the top, there's this hills. And on these hills, there's like 4 houses that have been built. And those houses have all been built by my aunts and uncles and their families. And then there's 2 farmhouses out to the front of the property. So there's 6 houses in total, but there's a 7th one that sits in the middle of the property. Okay, on a little bit of the floor of this little valley. And it's the original house. And originally it started as a 1-room house, and it had dirt floors. And then eventually they put a concrete floor down and made a bedroom for my grandparents. And what they've done is they've refurbished that little place. They keep it kept up now. And it's supposed to be a reminder for the grandkids, the great grandkids, and the great great grandkids where they're from. And I can remember taking my kids there and showing it to them. And it is a really stark reminder of where they're from. You know, I have a daughter that was fortunate enough to play on the Puerto Rican national softball team. In the Pan Am games when it was played in Puerto Rico. Courtney got to go. She got to see my dad's family again, and you know, and she talks about the history of it. And it's really kind of neat because it all is intertwined about family. I mean, the family pride when she came and got to play, and my aunts and uncles and cousins all went to the game. I couldn't go because we were in training camp, but just seeing how the family structure is so involved, that's where a lot of it comes from for me. I mean, the work ethic, the pride in the work, where you're from is a really big deal. And so I think that's really kind of what has helped me through life and really has kind of set me on that path, is that, you know, it is about being family oriented.
Family is extremely important to you. You've obviously tried to build that with the cultures of your different teams as well. You know, Coach, for you, were there ever any specific cultural experiences that resonated with you when you were younger? For example, MJ and I always talk about, you know, the food that we ate, or the music that we listened to, or the shows like novellas that we would watch. Were there ever any sort of cultural experiences that really hit you when you were young?
Yes, Christmas. Because
Christmas, yes.
No, but it's celebrated, you know, in the Latino communities, especially in Puerto Rico, it's celebrated on 3 Kings Day.
In January. 100%. Yes.
January 6th, because what people don't realize is the 12 days of Christmas, the song, the 12 days of Christmas, is that's how long it took for the 3 kings to get to the baby Jesus. So during that process, you know, when we went to Puerto Rico a couple of times for Christmas, my brother and I, we were getting like presents, you know, on Christmas, but then we got presents on the 26th, 27th, 28th, and also I'm like going, okay, so what's going on? Well, they explained it to us. My cousins explained to us. Well, it's 3 kings. You know, and they were trying to explain to us that this is the tradition. So that's how I learned the whole tradition of the 12 days of Christmas, is that it's the celebration until the 3 kings get to the baby Jesus to present themselves. So that was one of the things that I always thought was really cool. But the biggest thing was that each one of those days too, you went to somebody else's house and you had to eat. And all the traditional Puerto Rican food. I mean, everything from bacalao to pasteles. I mean, going on and on and on. And if you're not careful, it's real easy to gain about, 10 pounds, 15 pounds in a 2-week visit. So it was fun.
In a heartbeat. Here's the great thing, though. Usually when you're on these visits, there's music, you're dancing, so you can sort of offset a little bit of the calories. For my family, Noche Buena is the big thing, stateside, right? Like for us in the U.S., the ones in Dominican Republic still very much Los Reyes Magos in January, very, very important. Huge. It does not end. The tree does not come down until after Los Reyes Magos. But Noche Buena for us was like the huge thing. Everybody would fly in from Puerto Rico, from Dominican Republic, from New York to my madrina's house in Miami. This has stopped since the pandemic, unfortunately, but it was the family event of the year. Like everyone planned around Noche Buena. And then on Christmas Day, we were back to my madrina's house, and it was that cooking up the leftovers, making plátanos, making mango. And it's like those moments that we're now in August in the middle of summer, but I can remember what it felt like being there. I can taste the food as I'm talking. Like those are the things that just stay with you forever, right? Even if we haven't done it in several years. So thank you for bringing up that memory, because it like took me right back there immediately.
And you know what's very similar too is in the Mexican culture, you know, on my mom's side, during the holiday season, the family would come together and it would go into my mom's garage, my mom and dad's garage, and they would make the tamales. And it was like an assembly line. Everybody had a specific job, and they would wrap up a few hundred, and then they would divvy it up between each other. Oh, hundreds. I mean, seriously.
Oh my God.
What were your favorite, Coach?
Oh gosh, I just love the tamales. I just love them. I mean, they're really good. But you know, it's like you know, it's a cultural thing. And when friends would come over that you know weren't of Hispanic descent or Latino descent, they would come in and they would eat and say, "Wow, this is really cool." And I said, "Well, explain a little bit to them," and they go, "Wow, that's a neat tradition." It really was. It was, and it really, you know, I think a lot of these things really helped, you know, mold me into who I am today. And I think a lot of it is also what drives me to believe in culture so much. That when you know I went to Carolina, when I came here, it was trying to you know develop a sustainable winning culture. You know, and that it is family oriented. You know, I encourage our players to have family come by once in a while. I encourage, you know, my wife and daughter to be around so people can see me how I treat my family to help set the example. You know, we did a Halloween thing last year. We did a Christmas thing last year. And so it's really just trying to get everyone to understand, you know, let's celebrate together because we work together. Let's be more than just coworkers. Let's be more than teammates. Let's really be family. So I do believe in culture.
It's you know, hearing both of you talk about your Christmas experiences. So for me, growing up, it's a Nicaraguan thing. We would go to midnight mass, then we would
my
eat.
gosh, yes.
Then we would eat. So we would load up on all the carbs, and then we would open up all the presents. You know, a Christmas Eve and a Christmas morning, and we'd be up until 7 or 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like it blew people's minds.
No, it does, because like for my wife, you know, my wife's 100% Filipino. I'm 25% on my mom's side. So we do the midnight mass. Then we do come home and we have basically a seafood feast. And then we get to open one present. Okay. And then the next morning we get to open the rest. But that's how, you know, her family did the tradition. And so we carried it on for our kids to see how we do it. Which is really cool. I didn't realize you were from Nicaragua.
Yeah, I'm Nicaraguan. Both of my parents, they immigrated to this country when they were in their late 20s, early 30s. So the only language we spoke in the house was Spanish. But the thing is, they told me that the best looking guy in Nicaragua was William. So that's why I'm not. That's why I'm not Pedro. That's why I'm not Carlos. Because I would say, why not Carlos? He's like, no, you know, mujeriego. You know, he was a womanizer. Oh, you know, why not this name? And then they would say, no, él también, él tomaba mucho. So, you know, he was the drunk, you know, in Nicaragua. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why it's very interesting because we all come, and this is always the message that we say on the podcast. It's like we all different shapes, colors, and sizes. That's who and what we are as a culture.
Well, you know what's really interesting is my father was in the military, he was career Army. We were stationed in Panama.
Yeah,
we spent almost 4 years there.
I love
and
Panama.
when my dad transferred back to the United States, my parents thought it would be very educational for the boys. Okay, there were 4 boys to drive back along the Pan American Highway. So we drove from Panama all the way back to California.
No.
And we spent, it was during the Christmas season.
How long?
So it took about 12 days. But it was planned out. They mapped out where we would stop. We stopped in Nicaragua, spent some time in Managua because my dad was an engineer and he had helped when the earthquake hit Managua, Nicaragua. When Roberto Clemente was, you know, he passed in that plane accident.
Oh my God.
But my dad was sent there to help clean it up, you know, because he was an engineer and, you know, they used all the heavy machinery to help move things around. So he knew people there. So we stayed in Managua, Nicaragua for a couple of days. We stayed in Guatemala City for Christmas and celebrated Christmas there as a family. So we got to see what Central America looked like during the holiday season, and went through Mexico. Costa Rica was fabulous. So they mapped out where we would stay for a couple of days in each one of these spots. So we would get a sense for what it was like to see those cultures and those traditions. And it was fabulous. It really was. And it was a heck of an idea. It really was. It was a neat thing to do. And one other thing too, I got to play baseball because baseball is a huge sport
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Yes.
Yep.
And we were on a little league team, and we went and we played in Bluefield, Nicaragua.
Yes.
Wow.
There's some Nicaraguan stars came from there. Marvin Bernard, he
Yes.
played there. David Green also, it was from there.
Oh, Will is in his bag now.
Yeah. Oh, no, Coach, you're in my wheelhouse, baby. You're in my wheelhouse.
But what's really cool though was how baseball connected us, because like when
Mhm.
we were in Panama, we would play against the Panamanian kids. Then we go up, we play in this tournament in Nicaragua. I mean, you know, it's sports has opened up a lot of doors, and football's
Yeah.
starting to open up more doors for the Latino community. And I think it's important that we understand just how important sports has become in culture today in society.
Mhm.
And there's a way for us to do it the right way. That's the important thing, is we do it the right way for these young people coming up.
That's why the visibility and the representation is so important. And for kids to know, oh, wait, I can play more than just baseball. I can play more than just football with a U, soccer, as we call it here in the States, right? To know we see the new crop of kids coming in, Christian Gonzalez and the Fred Warners, who's absolutely crushing it. He's Panamanian and Mexican. And for us, we talk about it all the time on the podcast, because for us, it's like, wait, we know him. He's one of us. And like, we know that there are younger kids looking at that and saying, okay, now I can do it too, because he made it. If he made it, I know that I can do it. So to your point, Coach, we see the future is very, very bright for our young Latino stars, and like the representation, the fan base alone. I know you feel it because you interact and connect with the fans regularly.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. And I'll say this, one of my, I don't want to call it a regret or disappointment, was I never got the opportunity to have any involvement with the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have been because it has such a strong and passionate Latino following, you know, especially in the California area. You know, and me being from California, that would have probably put a lot of people over the top, you know, because I know begrudgingly they cheered for the Bears, they cheered for the Panthers, they cheered for DC now, and it's been really cool. It really has.
Yeah, we had Tom Flores on the podcast, one of our first guests. And so I know for you, you know, growing up in California and seeing the Raiders up close, essentially in your backyard, he's somebody to look up to, right?
Yes,
he was somebody who was a role model.
Yes, he was. And you know, and I've had the great fortune of being able to visit with Coach and talk with Coach about things. And he most certainly has been an inspiration. Him and Jim Plunkett were two of my bigger inspirations and influences in football. As I was getting older, you know, in my teen years and right into college. And even when I was in the NFL, I looked up to Coach and I looked up to Jim, and just, you know, those were two guys that I really wanted to pattern myself after because of who they are. Growing up, I knew who they were. And that's probably one of the more important things as well. So when Coach got into the Hall of Fame, and hopefully Jim Plunkett will get into it as well, it was a tremendous source of pride for me. It really was. Because as you both have said, that's the representation that we need, the validation that we can 100%. Be successful in this league, and we do have a place. And so that was really cool for me to see when Coach got in.
Well, Coach, you're now part of that blueprint. You're the next one up. You're the current one doing it, setting that example, and we could not be prouder. Thank you so much for your time, for being so open and candid with us. We always appreciate you. Always rooting for you, Coach.
Right on.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you guys.
We'll see you soon.
Appreciate you, Coach. Take care. Good luck.